Hello, I'm Kads and welcome to today's video. So first off, I do want to send out a massive thank you to all of you guys, my viewers and subscribers, because I did ask for you guys to get me above 700 and you guys blew that out of the water. So we're now roughly around 730 on the channel. So shout out to you guys. Thank you very much. Partially due to the, I guess, success of my day in the live video. So that one got a lot more views than normal. So that's pretty awesome. Good exposure. But yeah, thank you guys for pushing us over the 700 mark. And of course, the next target is 800 towards the eventual goal of 1000 by the end of 2023. So if you are new to the channel, then welcome. And hopefully you enjoy the content thus far and going forward. Now, for the task at hand, it is, of course, 2 times sacred. The portal is lit up in the yellow hue, and we're going to be pulling some shards in the pursuit of the Island Fusion Champion Chase going on right now. Now, normally I would do this on Sunday, but in this case, 10X is someone I wouldn't mind having a copy of. I do have Stultus. He was a previous guaranteed champion, and I did pull 150 Ancients to get him when that was live, but I wouldn't mind a dupe for Faction Guardians. So taking a look at the Champion Chase here, it's a pretty standard one where we have 2 different sets of fragments, but the most important point being that these top out at 2500. However, as usual, my pursuit is always the Legendary Tome here at 3000 points, and so that is going to be the target for today. Now, mathematically speaking, the worst possible outcome is that we have to pull up to 12 sacreds in order to guarantee the Legendary Tome at 3000, and that is if we get all epics, but it is 2 times sacreds, and typically the chance is around 1 in 8, and so I'm expecting to get it 1 to 2 legendaries in the pulls here, and so it shouldn't necessarily cost 12 sacreds overall. So speaking of the sacred shards, let's take a look at the portal and see where we are with the shard count overall. So I guess the elephant in the room is that we do have a new shard in the game. I'll talk about that in a second here. But we have 531 on the Ancient Shards, 250 on the Voids, 3 on the Primals, and 64 on the Sacreds. So as far as the Primal Shards are concerned, I would say I'm relatively indifferent to their addition to the game. And we can take a look here. But essentially, they're basically a double Ancient Shard, but they have the chance to get a Mythical of 0.5%. And the mercy system is pretty non-generous. I mean, it's 70 after 75 summons without a legendary, it starts going up by 1%. But mathematically, 1% of the 2%, it may not be that great. And so it still might take a while. I haven't done the math on that exactly. And then 200 without a mythical is basically worse than an ancient and a void shard, because those go up by 5% after 200, and so that's not that great either. So not entirely sure what to think about that. I don't really have a feel for how useful mythical champions are in general. The first set, to be honest, I haven't really paid that much attention and looked into their kits overall. I don't expect to get one for a while. Also, we don't really have all the information about how many shards we're going to get per month on average. From events and tournaments and what all the other sources, and then obviously mythical tomes. We don't know where those are going to come from just yet. So we're missing a lot of info, and that's why I haven't really talked about it that much, because I'd like to have as much information as possible collectively before I form an opinion and start projecting fears and anxieties onto the content that may or may not be real. But yeah, so I'm kind of treating this the same way I treated the addition of the soul stones, where I want to see how many we can get free to play over time and compare that to, you know, the mercy system and other such elements, and see how reasonable of a shard it is, because obviously we're not going to be buying them. And so I'd wait and see, I guess, rain check on my full opinion of that new system. So as is tradition, I'm going to pop up my Mercy Tracker spreadsheet here on the screen, which will be linked in the description box down below if you guys want to take the default copy for yourselves. But as you can see here, the thing to note is that we are 1 away from entering Sacred Mercy, which obviously does not guarantee that we're going to get a legendary in the subset of shards that we're going to be pulling today, but obviously the likelihood will be increased. So on top of the 2x. And so that's why I expect to at least get 1 legendary today, most likely 2, unless we're just really unlucky with the 1 in 8 rough odds. And a brief aside here is that in the most recent patch, they did change the background of the portal to match the different shard type, which I think is really cool, but it's one of those like small things that most people probably don't care about, but I kind of like it, where it's not the default color. I forget what, I think it was green, I don't remember, or blue. But I kind of like that it kind of matches each of the shards. So that's kind of cool. And lastly, before we get to the pulls, the wish list. Who am I looking for legendaries? Because as we spoke about last weekend with the Summon Rush, we are basically good on epics. And so no epics aside from void epics, I guess, would be useful to me. So those are officially done and off the wish list. So legendaries are all that we seek. And it hasn't changed, unfortunately. So we're still looking for Poison Exploder, so Xavier or Elenaril. We're looking for a Valkyrie or a Molly Tankard. So hopefully we can get one of those in the legendaries. But again, there is a 10x on Stultus, and I don't plan to use a second one. I don't really have a purpose aside from a Faction Guardian. But my Faction Guardians are pretty abysmal. I think my highest is like 4 out of 10. So I wouldn't mind getting him, but it's also a 10x, which we all know is relatively unlikely for it to happen. I think it's down to like a 6% chance of getting the single 10x, maybe even lower than that. So I'm not banking on getting him, even though he's featured, but the odds are increased, so you never know. We'll see what happens. All right, let's get into the shard pulls. We've got the space, we've got some cash, and hopefully we've got some, let's say, average luck. Let's not be greedy here. I think 2 would be a reasonable expectation. 1 from going into Mercy, and then another one just from the raw odds of 1 in 8. So I'd say average luck, 2 legendaries, and let's get it started here with the first shard headed into Sacred Mercy, and it is an epic, who is Sanguinia. So I think she's somewhat underrated of a champion, but she's also not one of the best epics in the game by any means. But she does have this cool ability here on a 4-turn cooldown, which effectively is a full turn cleanse, but it doesn't apply block debuffs. She has that on her other ability here with a continuous heal. So kind of niche, but one of those champions that's kind of annoying more as an enemy wave champion in Doom Tower, because or like Secret Rooms, I think she's in, and so just kind of cleanse the enemy wave, and you're like, wait, what just happened? And it's Sanguini here with this ability here. So pretty niche, but can be a cleanser if you need her to just cleanse without placing block debuffs on a 4-turn cooldown. Moving on, Sacred Numero Dos. We are still in Mercy, or Hot Shards as a Chosen would call it. And the first legendary of the day is unfortunately Robar. I don't recall if that's a dupe or not. I have to check. He is one of the hardest hitting force affinity nukers in the entire game because of one of these abilities here. This one, where it'll increase if they're under any of the CC things. However, it's worth noting here that aside from like fear and provoke, I guess sleep as well, stun, petrification and freeze reduce the damage they take, so you get some of that increment decremented by whatever their respective decrements are, so keep that in mind. But he does hit relatively hard. It is on a 4-turn cooldown, and he does also have AoE defense, decreased defense, so kind of can be that hybrid debuffer nuker type champion. Not as much used in today's meta, but he definitely used to be one of the best AoE nukers in the game. So we're cruising right along. Mercy is reset. We still have plenty of sacreds to go, and hopefully we can get another legendary within the next 8-ish sacreds to keep on the rate. Back to the land of epics. We have another orc, and that is Sandlash Survivor, who's actually one of the champions on my clan boss team, because she does have this ability here that increases the duration of all ally buffs on a 3-turn cooldown, which is what's required for the super tanky team in place of a Krisk. For those like me who don't have a Krisk, you need a champion who can extend buffs, so pretty useful. Now I do also have Godseeker Neri who can do that role as well, but I have her built at a different speed, and I didn't want to lock her to a specific speed tune. So for the indefinite future, unless I pull a Valkyrie, Sacred Shards, but unless I pull a Valkyrie and remake the team to it, or change the team to a different one, we're going to keep using Sandlash Survivor because I'm not really that fussed about eking out the maximum amount of damage from my team. All right, moving right along. Next Sacred is going to be something normal. Okay, another epic. Sakara, one of the librarians, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. Yeah, look at that. Lovely 9 levels. I don't think there's much to say about her. I think one of her sisters is actually a relatively hard-hitting nuker, but the rest of them are just kind of meh. Moving right along, next Sacred is going to be probably another epic, but you never know. Nope. Okay, another epic. Basilisk, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. He's pretty decent for Faction Wars and probably the epic Lizardman Secret Room, because he does have an AoE on the A1, which is very powerful, of course, in the stun set. And in addition, he also has a ability here that can place a stun, and that does include on weak hits. So he's one of those champions that kind of bypasses that mechanic. So even if he weak hits on the A2 here, he can still stun the target. So you put him in a stun set, and you have 2 ways to stun. One of them is guaranteed if you have enough accuracy, of course, and then obviously the RNG chance of the stun set on the A1. So we're about halfway in towards the 3,000, 1,600 points. Let's keep it going with the next Sacred Shard. Let's see it. That gold sparkle. Nope, it's purple. Okay. Sepulchre Sentinel. Decent old school, I want to say, or retro clan boss champion, or demon lord clan boss champion, because she does have increased defense and block debuffs for 2 turns on a 4-turn cooldown. Unfortunately, she does have to be run at a 4-3 speed ratio relative to the demon lord clan boss in order to have this ability back for each individual cycle of his 3 turns. But she does also have decreased attack on the A1, which is pretty useful. And then her passive here, she can potentially 50-50 shot, just block damage on a targeted ally, and it has a 1-turn cooldown. So that can also be very clutch in saving a run that's going awry if they just don't take damage from the stun hit, for example. Next up, we have Legendary Pause Champ, and it is Halfrack. Interesting. Okay, Halfrack is probably the bane of a lot of people's arena's existence because he is one of the troll defenses in Stone Skin, because they take advantage of his passive here, which will automatically activate his big, massive AoE smack here that by default ignores 15% of your defense for each hit, and it will get an extra hit if the target is below 50% HP after the first hit. So obviously he's bad against reaction and Stone Skin and stuff like that, but if you're relatively going against a squishy team and they're not ready for it, especially if you're actually built to full crit rate, because some people do build him to 70% because he can give himself the increased crit rate. But if you care about his passive, you want to build him all the way to 100. And so build him in, a lot of people build him in Stone Skin, 1 or 2 turns. They put some level 1 champion, food champion in with him. And if you kill the food champion, he activates the ability, kills your entire team. So don't be fooled. You've been warned. You've been notified of why that works. And always assume that every single Halfrack you see in the arena is in Stone Skin. So it looks like we were just one with the nuke today with the Robar and the Halfrack as far as the legendaries are concerned, and that technically is the 2 legendaries that I expected to get today. So from here on out, we're kind of just winging it and seeing what happens. But we are at 2350 on the champion chase points, so just a little bit more to go, up to I guess 3 sacreds worst case. So let's keep it going and see what else we can garner here. So next sacred is going to be an epic, as expected. Chancellor Yasmin. I think I pulled her last time as well. Kind of just meh. She has a 75% chance to strip all buffs, which is just not as good as it should be. You'd want a 100% chance. You don't want to not do it. And then it's on a 4-turn cooldown. It's like a 4-turn cooldown for a not 100% chance, which is just not really worth it. But it is affinity friendly because it's not an attack. So that is nice to know. And then she also has a heal on a 2-turn cooldown that can be pretty massive, but you don't get a lot of utility from the champion overall. So we have 400 points to go to the tome. Is this going to be another legendary to bring us over the line? And it is not. So we have at least 1 more sacred to go to guarantee the tome. Achak the Wenderin is very, very strong for the Spider's Den, specifically the stages between 21 and 25. I guess you could use them earlier as well as just a CC champion. But the A3 here has a 90% chance when booked to apply freeze, and that it will freeze the Spiderlings because their attack is higher than their defense, and you can't freeze the boss, so it doesn't matter. It doesn't do anything on a 3-turn cooldown. So one of the best Spider CC champions in the game, partially because it's a freeze, not a stun, so he's not doing a lot of damage. He is a support. Freeze makes them take less damage in case you have some sort of nuking HP burn activator in the team, like a Sissy of Flame Tongue, for example. And it also works really nicely with this passive, where when they're under freeze, everyone on the team gets turn meter, so it just helps your team kind of cut in line and go a bit faster. And then obviously you pair him with an HP burner, so if anyone happens to be low or a Spiderling is unfrozen and they start attacking your team, they get healed up every time an enemy under a burn takes a turn. So the last sacred of the day, here we go. This is it. Doesn't really matter what this pulls, but it's an epic. I was kind of hoping for more, but again, we did get our 2 legendaries. The expectation is met. Necrohunter, really not much to say about him. He's pretty much a garbage epic champion. All right, so that's going to do it for the shard pulls. Let's double check my math in the champion chase here, if the ads will go away, which they never will, but we'll keep closing them indefinitely. But champion chase tournament here, we should have the lovely tome lit up. Yep, yeah, we do. I forget where the energy is. We want to save that for later. But yeah, this is probably the most sacreds I've pulled in a while. One, because they haven't done a guaranteed or a Mishinaki style summon rush in like forever. But also because normally what I would do for specifically for 2x ancient or 2x sacreds during a fusion is that I would come into the portal and I would just pick some random legendary in the gallery of the unsummoned, as I call it, like Yannicka or Gerda or whatever, daily login champions, June Tower champions, or previous fusions, I would just come in here, pick a legendary, just get free 500 points. But in this case, like we highlighted at the beginning of the video, I knew I was pretty much going to start in Mercy, and so I knew the odds were good of me getting 2 legendaries, which already kind of makes up for that. So technically I could have saved 1 or 2 sacred shards in addition to getting the 2 that we pulled, but I didn't exactly know when those 2 were going to happen, if they're going to happen at all. So I was willing to risk it a little bit more for the biscuit on this one. Alrighty, so that's going to do it for today's video. I did check, and both Robar and Halfrack are new on my accounts, so we have a couple more nukers in the arsenal that will probably join the rest of my other unused nukers in the vault, unfortunately. But do let me know if you guys had pulled either of these champions. Would you use them immediately, or would you vault them like myself? Partially because I don't like Stone Skin at all, and therefore I refuse to use it myself, and so the Stone Skin Halfrack build would not be useful to me, and so he would just be another nuker on my account, and I have a lot of nukers and I don't really need more. So I guess we proved once again that 10x's are definitely a scam by not getting a Stultus with 2 Pulsar, but again, it's 5% chance, 1 in 20, so you have to get 20 legendaries to have a chance on paper to have gotten the at least one of those to be Stultus, so can't be too bent out of shape about 2 out of 20 there. But anyways, as always, if you enjoyed this video, especially one where I pulled definitely a lot more shards than usual, then be sure to hit that like button down below, as well as subscribe to the channel for more content just like this one in the future. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.